Okay, everyone. Good morning. Hope you all had a calm weekend. Happy Tuesday. Happy Independence Day to my fellow Latvians. Very important day for us in the country. I hope wherever you are cherishing your freedom. We'll continue to do that during these crazy times. Gonna do some Bitcoin charts as usual. Let a few more people get into the stream, but I'll start in a second here. So down we go. Down we go. I know it's been a nerve-wracking week for a lot of people. We're dropping off the curve, okay? All this stuff is very difficult to predict in the short term. I'm thinking of the show I did last week with James. Which was actually 2 weeks ago now, wasn't it? Well, within the last 10 days, let's say. And even based on his expert on-chain research, he said, and I probably shouldn't say this, but it kind of looks like a dip. That's what he said. He also said that, we have this air gap between 95K and, somewhere into the 80s. So we've hit that. We're into the air pocket. I pulled the model in right here, 91K, but as I'm sure if you've been paying attention to this stuff, it's been more volatile than that, and I'm sure you've been refreshing. I got 90.9 right now. Overnight it was 89.4. 89,400. So just in the effort of, and in the spirit of trying to stay calm and look at these things in different ways. Also in light of the good comment last week, I think it was Pan B that talked about doing the curve in Turkish lira. I decided to make a bunch of other currencies. Obviously not everybody here is thinking in dollars. And we'll go through it. But just to finish the thought on where we are right now, again, Latvia's Independence Day, November 18th. If we were to look at these bands as, support and resistance, which again, I'm not even claiming, it's just relative risk. We're now below the median, okay? We're below the 50th percentile, which is historically about 0.8x the trend. So the trend is already, remember, the trend's still going up about $100 a day. Trend's at 120K. I told you it was going to be 125K at the end of the year. That's not really changing. Although the speed, again, slows down slightly every day that we're under this black line. So, we just ever so slightly pulling that trend down. It's always a happy day when we're above the trend, right? But this does pull the trend down. This is actually not long enough. If you look back in the 2 years since we've been, rising out of the 2022, 2023 bear, we dipped below the 5 here, sort of kissed it here, and now we are below it. Am I on the 17th? On the 18th. Yeah, the 5 is 92. 92.9. It's the same on the next day today. We're at, 90, 91. So if you just look back over the last 2 years of uptrend, clear uptrend, since we broke out of this area, and once the ETFs were approved, we boosted. But it's only hit this level, again, not counting this. Again, you could started in July 2024 and then bottomed out in September. So bumped around for 2 months and then just one more time hit it. So this is, in the last 2 years, you can say relatively rare. Good morning, Alfonso. Bitcoin indeed on a Black Friday sale. I'm not going to go too much into where I think the bottom could be because, again, I have no idea. But we can look at these levels. We can look at all the buying that ETFs continue to do. Wall Street continues to do. It's going to add some support. So that's dollars. Let's look at euros. All right. I'm in Europe. I think many of you are in Europe. Remember, we dropped through the median in dollar terms. In euro terms, it's the same. Okay. About 78.6. Trendline 111. Very similar action, as you would expect from dollar, euro, and again, 95K in dollars was what James said was a critical level to hold, and I see that as well. We're below it. And in euro terms, we are below the 50th percentile, somewhere right between the 40th and the 50th percentile. And again, the 50th percentile is the median. So if you take all the observations of where the price was below or above the power law, the power curve, the power trend, the median is right in the middle. So we're below that. Statistically, still, we're at the median, slightly below. Let's look in Japanese yen. Yen is a wild currency. It's weak consistently against the dollar. Trying to zoom in here. Okay, so interestingly with the yen, we are not below the 50th percentile. 14 million yen per Bitcoin. 16.3 million is the trend, and the 50th percentile is 12.9 or 13 million. So above average, or above the median, I should say. Actually, I don't know why the average is not pulling up at the moment, but that's fine. Above the 50th percentile. If you played this now in yen, I know very few people in the world are really thinking in terms of yen, but it seems more clear that this median is some sort of a support. Again, whether it holds, I do not know. Let's look at the rupee. All right, 8 million is the rupee price today. Below trend. But like the yen, above the 50th percentile. Which I do think is interesting. Generally, these currencies get weaker. Not all of them, euro in particular, but generally these currencies get weaker against the dollar. So the fact that Bitcoin is staying above the 50th percentile there makes some sense. All right, so this is the rupee. Let's look at the naira. Now, I should have put a note. The naira. So naira is one of the biggest currencies in Africa. In fact, most used. But it has a black market rate. This is not the black market rate, the parallel rate, as they call it. This is the official rate or central bank rate. So here you can see the weakness of the naira, even at official rates. Well above trend. In fact, at the 70th percentile, though, about to go below the 70th. Let's do the lira again. We looked at the lira last week. So the naira about to go below the 70th. And the lira, which is also a very quickly inflating currency, 40+% or so, even on average over the last 50 years, also about to go below the 7th, or the 70th, number 7 here. So for the weaker currencies, if you use them as transactional, you're still relatively okay. Say where that currency has been in the past. You know, in the Turkish lira, probably the height was somewhere here, 4.8 million per Bitcoin. Now 3.8. Still a big drop. But again, due to the nature of the weak currency relative to the dollar, still historically quite high. And again, the naira, if I use the parallel rate, which I don't have on a daily basis at the moment, I'm working to try to get it. But if I use the parallel rate or the black market rate, this would be even worse for the naira, meaning it would be even higher. All right, so interesting again that the naira has already hit the 90th percentile during this run. So it barely hit that in 2021, but it's hit it already twice here. So again, interesting to see the different perspectives that you might have. Oh, thank you, Shifu, for the volume request. It's also my voice is kind of bad today, but I'm going to try a different mic. I like the dynamic because it doesn't catch too much outside noise around the room, but I'm going to look for a mic that doesn't need as much of a preamp. All right, now we're going to go back to, whoops, where is it? Did I close out of it? Maybe. Let me open it up really quick. I want to go back to gold because gold is super interesting at the moment. All right. So we saw all the fiat, or not, certainly not all. I'll put more because I know it's interesting. Oh, thank you, Aprila. Thank you. Yeah, I'm constantly changing. I do have that. I had this filter on OBS before, which really made it soft, but that's removed, and some other things are boosted now. But I just don't want to redline it. But I'll boost it more in the future. All right, so we got gold now. Now, this to me remains the most interesting chart. Gold's a store of value, Bitcoin's a store of value, and we're coming back to extremely cheap. If you embrace the power curve, if you embrace the idea that Bitcoin is uniquely following this trend line, which is this sort of gently curved slope on log linear scale, you can really, this is the time, in my opinion, again, not financial advice, but this is the time, in my opinion, where you can start to see if you have positions in one asset, you might want to think about the relative risk. Now, clearly, everybody knows we're in a soft place right now. And crypto Twitter, Bitcoin Twitter, I know has been melting down over the weekend, but this no doubt can get cheaper, clearly. All right. But again, if you only go back 3 years, we're still over 2x more expensive in terms of gold ounces. All right. We got down to under 10 here when SBF's troubles came to light, and now we're still over 20, barely, but we are 22.5. So to me, this is really, really interesting. At some point, I don't know when that point is, but the gold bugs that have hodled their gold all the way through and now just really can't ignore Bitcoin, no matter what Peter Schiff says, might have to start thinking about, the moments that Bitcoin looks cheap to them. Because it's really cheap right now to the gold bugs. It can absolutely go lower. It can go back. It can go down to 10. Who knows? We can go into like serious, like the worst observation ever as far as a multiple over or under the curve is 0.1x. All right, so that would take. Actually, that's interesting. The level now. Look at that. So this is, and it's always going to be in the early days when it was like super volatile. So it was like here. This didn't exist at the time. When the price was here, right, and now it's not enough decimals here. We were always under an ounce before 2017. But this little up arrow, right, that was literally the worst multiple at the time of Bitcoin's price in gold versus the power trend as it was being created. To get to that level, right, it's 8 ounces. Maybe we hit it. I don't know. But you can see how rare the representation is by how far apart these things are. So usually I don't even think about this because it was usually set in early days and, you know. So setting like a new all-time low relative to the trend, as far as the multiple goes, would have been 4 ounces of gold back in 2022. We didn't even get, you know, we didn't even get to double that. We were at 9x. We didn't even get to 9 ounces. Now, that truly worst case scenario would be 8 ounces of gold. 8 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin. You know, we can always hit it. We can always set new lows. But what you're looking at here is statistically the relative risk. So we're still pretty far away. But this is a very interesting chart to me because clearly gold's a store of value. Clearly Bitcoin's a store of value. Most gold bugs that listen to Peter Schiff have been burned over the past decade. I mean, if you listen to Peter Schiff, you were burned. You certainly heard about Bitcoin. Peter Schiff told you Bitcoin was bad, and you were burned. So how low will this go? It's very interesting. You know, I did a top 10 percentiles, like 90th, 91st percentile, 92nd with the dollar, right? We're not even close. Like I was always sort of prepping you all to think about if Bitcoin went over the 9. I know we're not even close to going over the 9. I might have to do that with this chart under the 10. In fact, I will. I mean, I'll do it tomorrow because clearly we're getting close. So going to the 9th percentile, going to the 8th percentile. It's extremely cheap right now if you're a gold bug thinking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is extremely cheap. I want to show this post from my buddy Smitty, Sminston with. Excellent analyst. You have to follow him. If you're not, please do. All right, for the anxious Bitcoin investor. We'll just read through it. How much does timing matter when buying BTC and hodling for 10 years? Okay, it's a long-term thing. We simulated an investor smash buying today with 100K at 3 different entry points. Today's price, and this is already below it, 20% cheaper, 20% more expensive. We then projected Bitcoin 10 years out using the median power law trend and had the simulated investor in each scenario withdraw 10% of their holdings each year. Take a dividend, take 10% off the table into fiat. Finally, we threw in 3 possible exits. Sell at the predicted median, sell at 20% above median, sell at 20% below median. So I was just thinking about this in my head. I was in Italy over the weekend, and I was talking to him about scenarios that I thought would be cool to see. So rather than even going to the trend line, which is above, as we know, usually it's about a 2/3 of the time event. Let's go even more sort of conservative, which is the median, which is the 5. which is going to be hard to see here, but it's the yellow line. So it's this line. And like I said, we are below the median in dollar terms. Okay, so let's look at it. I know the numbers changed every day. I know Bitcoin's volatile. Buy 20% cheaper, all right? You'll start with 1.33 BTC. All right, you also sell 20% cheaper in 10 years. That's 642, your stash. Remember, you're also taking out 10%. Sell at the median, 800K. Sell at 20% more expensive, 963K after 10 years. All right, you do at today's price, same deal. Sell at 20%. So now we're not getting it that discount that we talked about, which that discount may come. Sell at 20%, 10 years from now, 500K. Median, 642, 20% more expensive, 771K. And then if you buy at the most expensive, you get 0.89 BTC, that is 428K. At the 20% discount, the median 535, 20% premium 642. So the idea is, again, I know people get anxious. I get anxious. That's why I do these videos. So even if you effed up both the entry and exit by 20%, you'd still end up with a 10-year return of 4.3x, even after taking 10% off the table of your balance every year. All right, so here's the chart. Smitty was kind enough to put my logo on there as well. He used the median. All right. Not even the power law, which is higher, the OLS. Here's your portfolio value. All right. You still withdraw the 10% a year of your balance. All right, so there's your, this is just on the median price trend if you bought from the first day. He's not even, this doesn't talk about the when you exit, that's down here. But when you enter, like I said, if you get the discount, which the discount may come 20% cheaper, right? 20% cheaper would be whatever, 80K. We may go to 80K. You're still looking at 800K after 10 years. Also withdrawing 10% of your balance like a dividend every year. And then here are the different scenarios of what you could do after 10 years, but also with the different sales. Okay, so if you buy 20% cheaper, but then also sell 20% cheaper, you get this. If you buy 20% cheaper and sell more expensive, then you get close to a mil. And so on and so forth. So you can see the worst case is where you buy 20% more expensive and sell 20% more expensive than today's rough price. You get this. So probably little calculators like this would be helpful to get on my site. I have wanted to do it for a while, but these things are clearly most effective if you just think about it longer term, take the noise out of it. So to be clear, let's go back to the dollar chart. Let me put on. So the power curve itself right now is about 20%, more than 20% more expensive. And going down to the /40th percentile or something like that, 20% cheaper. not even factoring the power curve, factoring something like, I guess 4, 5, 6, really. This is roughly the levels of his calculations. Right? If you go out, let's compare. Let's compare. Let's go out 10 years. So mine are going to be, I did not do 10% withdrawals here, right? So you can also think about that. You get these numbers. So that's roughly what he did as far as projecting out. But again, we took the 10% withdrawals, and we talked about if you sell, you know, well under trend or well over trend, so on and so forth. But the trend is that 1.7, the median trend. Let me show you gold on a trend, because I don't think I've shown that in a while, and it just to show you how great of an investment opportunity Bitcoin remains. Risk, reward, never financial advice. Because no matter what Peter Schiff says, it's just not. It's not in the same ballpark of the opportunity that Bitcoin has. I need to actually get farther out there. I know I've shown the 40% trend, but let's just, even bigger picture, let's show this. All right, so gold grows exponential. All right, so if I put this on log, here's linear, log. Very simple. This is only going back to 1999, but the trend is from 1969, all the way from when gold started to float. 79% R squared. I had a little gnat there or something. All right, well over trend. Gold bugs are happy, very happy right now. Oh, this is even not as of May. Sorry, I'll show you a better one then. Let's get that out of there. Go back to this. Let's do the long and the short. And the 10th. All right, so this is important to keep in mind when we think about where gold could go, what gold could do. All right, so this is the most realistic case. All right, again, log scale, log linear for most assets, it's a straight line. Yes, there's variability as the trend itself fills itself out. So really, it wasn't a straight line, back then. Right? There was big uptrends, then a downtrend for 20 years, then back up. But over the long, long term, this is the gold trend. Okay? So we haven't, and I stretched this to the max, the 100th percentile and the 0th percentile. So we haven't hit the theoretical bound of our over exponential trend price for gold. That would be $5,000 gold today. Okay. So we have room, plenty of room to go higher. But the overall slope, as you see, is a 5.3% CAGR. It's just Nothing like Bitcoin's, which is a 42% CAGR at the moment, although that is declining. But if you go out 10 years, even on the, even if you say, okay, we bought it for 4,000, and then in 10 years we'll get the 100th percentile, it's a little bit over 2x. Okay? $8,874, $9,000, something like that. And then you could say Peter Schiff would come in and be like, no, 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 gold's just been suppressed. Central banks, conspiracies, crypto took all the energy out of gold for the last, 10 years. Not to mention Bitcoin, which is the true comparison of gold, not any other crypto asset. So really, gold's going to get on a new trend, a completely different trend. All right. So again, being as favorable as I can to Peter Schiff, I've shown this before. Let's just take this trend. All right. Here's a good trend. 40%. This is indeed about exactly what Bitcoin does on a CAGR. All right. And I can show you precisely where it would outstrip the old trend. All right. If it continues on this trend, it's going to happen about a year from now at that $5,000. But then you got to start asking yourself, at what point does supply and demand kick in? All these new gold mines and gold miners that are coming in that don't know what they're doing, they're going to keep adding more and more supply to the market as the price rises. And as we say, the cure for high prices is high prices if you're a consumer. If you're just not going to choose to buy that wedding band in gold because the price looks so crazy, you're not going to do it. And that's it. And the price will come down. You have more producers coming online, making more and more gold at higher and higher prices, more supply. At some point, it's going to outstrip demand. Price will come down. I've shown other charts about how this just looks insane, like, let alone the price. I mean, once you get out about 5 years, you start to 40% compounding looks insane. All right, it's 40% compounding after 5 years will still get you to about 20K. That's even something I could see, right? 20K gold. I can see that. But if it continues to compound at 40% per year, by 2033, it's 56K. Then you got to start looking at the market cap, looking at how much gold that will actually, the value of that gold relative to other assets. And then it's just like, well, we don't have to do anything. We just hold gold. Gold does not have the same supply demand dynamics of Bitcoin. It does not. Bitcoin supply is fixed every 10 minutes because of the difficulty adjustment. Gold doesn't have that. So there's just no way that it's going to continue on this Peter Schiff trend line, as friendly as I can be. Right? And actually, one of the things I wanted to do more was show the timeline of the other big booms, right? So we have examples of this. We have examples. Here, you can see it's a, it can run for many years, right? So here it ran for 5 years, retraced, 4 years, and then retraced for 20 years. You can argue about why that is, whatever, but it basically went down for 20 years. Then it boomed for 8. Actually, sorry. It boomed for 8. Fell, interestingly, like all assets, during the GFC, then took off again for 3 more years, and then sideways. So we have examples of how long these booms can actually run in the gold market. You don't need to talk about conspiracies or China buying. And by the way, central banks are not buying any more gold now than they were 10 years ago on a percentage basis. I can show you that chart. Sorry, I'm trying. One second. Here it is. All right. This is the world gold reserves, largest holders. It's the whole world, though. The remaining world is here. I've talked about it. We got, Asia is coming. But again, for all the talk about Russia, Asia, China, India, let's just look at India. Sorry, that's China. That's so bad in yellow. But India, China, Russia. Let's even take out all. Okay, so they are buying. True. Russia, by the way, doesn't have any money anymore for tyrannically invading Ukraine. China's buying a little bit more. But if you add the rest of the world here, including the big current holders, IMF, which the US controls, has a huge stash of gold, United States and Europe. All right. The overall percentage is something like 1.5%. I always keep forgetting, so let me get you the exact number. A 1.5% from 2008. The nadir was literally when the markets bottomed. It was somewhere, it was like February or March 2009, which was indeed when the S&P 500 bottomed at 666. Let me find it. Too many calculations. It's 1.2. All right, so if you look at the total cumulative ounces here, all right, so there were something like 1 billion. All right, and now we're getting close to 1.2 billion ounces. Multiply by the price to get the value. Here's the value total, right? So it's screaming, right? And this is March, is the latest data. I could extrapolate, but I don't have it really from March. It's kind of slow from World Gold Council. The prices, for sure, making it all look better. But as far as the demand for the physical, it's not reflecting a 40% price increase. The CAGR of 963 million ounces back in March 2009 to March 2025, where it's 1.166 billion ounces, is 1.2% per year. All right. So Peter Schiff is going to give you all sorts of reasons why he thinks this is going to go on forever and is setting a new trend and the world's going to change on gold. But we have plenty of examples throughout financial history, modern financial history, with free floating gold, where this just will not go on. This is the Peter Schiff trend. It's more likely going to be here. And it may it may look like something like this when all is said and done. We may set new tops. Okay, this was setting the top relative to the trend, which is, as you see right there, 2.54x. That's what that means. So the most extended that gold has ever been over its exponential trend line is 2.54x. We could increase that. Maybe we go to 3. I don't know. But there is no historical data to show anything higher. Nothing like this over the long term. And then you have to explain to me, where's the buying power going to come from if central banks themselves have bought over the course of 16 years, 17 years, 1.2% per year growth. Thank you guys for the reposts. Good morning, Scotty. I did not hear it. I'm sure it was funny, though. This is the chart to watch. This is fascinating to me, and I really, when I do these streams, I realize I need to update charts, right? And just like we did the top 10 percentiles with the dollar, for this, I think it's fair since gold is screaming. Let's start looking now at the bottom 10 percentiles from 10 to 0 and start to ask ourselves, okay, how cheap could Bitcoin actually get in terms of gold ounces? Getting under 9 is historically extremely cheap. And then, getting back to pre-ounce levels or something, that's so far from a statistical reality. I have trouble seeing it. So we'll have to see. So this is going to be interesting too. Here's our network revenue, which I look at a lot. Okay. It's total miner revenue amidst this crashing of the price. Network revenue used to be able to tell you a top. Okay. It was the same thing basically. It's like when, coins were so, when coins were free, when you could mine and make deals based on some random electricity cost on PayPal or something, and send over PayPal payments, and someone would send you some Bitcoins. The revenue was pretty, responsive to price. All right, we see here as well big mountains of daily revenue. Now it's a bit different. A couple things. First of all, we had the halving seem very powerful this time. But that effect is always there, right? It was here. It was here as well. Just very small, like a smaller effect, right? 17 million went down to 8 million a day. This is daily miner revenue. Block reward plus fees. New coins plus fees. Daily. If you sold that in dollar terms based on the price that day, revenue halves. Okay. But this was a big number. And by the way, this is just going to continue the same effect in the future. Like, I'm not explaining anything, groundbreaking. This is just how it works, as you know. But these numbers are pretty big now in daily terms. All right. So I think as a more interesting proxy now is to look at least the 30-day. All right, which again is a clear top, although again it's not as exactly a perfect top color, but you can clearly see, bubble territory. Now it may be that this was the top, right before the halving. It may be like the local top. I have a hard time seeing that, but 2 billion a month was the top here. Now miners are only making, again, it's an academic number, but presuming they sell their coins every day, which I know they don't, 1.5 billion a month is the run rate. And if you stretch it further, we got the annual revenue. All right, and with annual revenue for miners, it's probably soon. I mean, if this price action continues, it's gonna not stay above the prior high long. So the prior high we set was in January of 2022. After all that price action of 2021, the top gets set, and then we go down. You see, again, the effect of the halving, which is not unique. It happened before. All right. Revenue growth gets stalled during a halving. Revenue growth gets stalled during a halving. But again, I have a hard time seeing that the top this time is lower than last time. How's another way I will explain that? Good morning, Isaac. Good morning. Another way would be here. All right, so I know I showed this, but again, just to show you how huge oil and gold are compared to Bitcoin. Right, this is roughly 30-day global oil revenue. 300 billion peaked there in 2008. 300 billion in May 2022. Now it's down to 173 billion. Gold miners loving life. Best it's ever been. All right. There's a little over 100 million ounces of gold mined a year. So divide that by 12, roughly, times the price, you'll get this number, roughly. 38 billion. And look how far behind Bitcoin is. This is the same picture I showed you before. 30-day miner revenue. So I think what I want to do as well, just again to try to show you how far we can go, is like put this as a percentage, right? Like just imagine this is just three industries: oil, Bitcoin, and gold. They all have production. They all have costs to produce. They have revenue. And obviously Bitcoin didn't start until here. But Bitcoin is on this chart. You can barely see it, but it's there. On trailing 30-day. Right, so again, just as a exercise to try to stay calm, and the storm will be managed. I'm sure of it, and Wall Street's continuing to buy. Bitcoin has plenty of room to eat into the production industries of both gold and oil. Although I understand oil is not a completely fair comparison here, but it's just for perspective. Gold is more accurate. And here we see on a trailing 30-day basis, Bitcoin is what, 20 times smaller? 38.5 divided by 1.5, very roughly 25 times smaller. So using revenue for the industry is another way to compare how an industry is doing. Buenos dias, Casa Murphy. That's amazing. After 4 years of encouraging my Colombian friends to adopt Bitcoin, the floodgates have opened. This dip is seeing them actually buy. I like to hear that. I can confirm, by the way, I can confirm the same. You know, and that's coming from, I mean, we all do our evangelizing, right? But um, I guess I've been publicly speaking now for 8 years. Most people know that in my circle of friends. So I can confirm. After seeing a dip, actually getting some people that were not interested before come and ask. It would be interesting if there was still something to the cycle. I know everybody's written it off like entirely now, but we still got a month and a half until the end of the year. Another thing that's kind of interesting, by the way, is if Bitcoin finishes negative for the year, right? So what's the starting price? Yeah, so we started at 93. We started above today's price. That's also interesting. What a zinger if people expected like a massive year. Bitcoin closes red. Good morning, Gio. Good morning. And I really do think I've said it a lot, but I think uh, everybody gets the price they deserve is a great meme. It really is a great meme. I mean, I remember these days, people loved Bitcoin at 15,000 and somehow they hated it at 5,000 and they really hated it at 3,000. This is interesting. Yeah, I guess I should add silver to this. Uh, it's smaller. It's smaller than Bitcoin, by the way. So at least it was. This. Well, let's go to trailing 12 month. This is so here's that trailing 12 month minor revenue. This is more than silver. Maybe not at current prices. I got to do the math, but I can add silver to this. Production revenue. We can do oil, gold, silver, and Bitcoin. It's typically quite small, but it's very true. I mean, it's an industrial component to silver. So it's true. Morning, Cyril. Yeah, quantum is I think a real fear for people now. Like that's sort of a real risk that they think about. And I'm not saying it's not a real risk. It's just that's a like part of their purchase component, their mental model. It's true. we talked about this last week, but 300,000 lira per Bitcoin in November 2022. Now 4.3 million. All right. I probably didn't harp on that enough, right? So let's go back to the 2022 lows. Again, this is official naira. It's even worse if you do black market. I know. So 8 million naira back in 2022. Now 132 million naira. And let's do rupees. 1.4 million rupees now. 9. So all of these are orders of magnitude different than the dollar, right? Let's look at the yen. 2.4, 2.3 back in 2022. Now 15. A little bit less. 14.1. That's wild. That's a wild swing in the yen. It was 18 in October. No, it's definitely part of the story. You're right. It's part of the story. I think you guys are in the. I mean, look, if you're taking the time to watch me talk about power curves, I think we're in a pretty rare quantile. Good point, Tim. Good evening. And just looking around the world, right? I mean, we watched some tennis this weekend. Sinner beat Alcaraz. The Italians are happy for the ATP finals. And we saw some Argentinians on the tram. Talk to them. You only use, like, it's a dollarized economy now because of Malay, and you only use that currency just to transact, right? Your savings aren't in that currency. But yeah, even in a valuable currency like Tim says, I mean, you could have bought at 18K right here, 38% CAGR still, and way more if you're, in Turkey or Turkiya. It's Turkiya, right? Ceradan? Turkiya is the way we should be calling it, I guess. $10x. So it's more equivalent to, this going from 16 or 20 to 200. All power curves still. Even the naira, which, again, I know this is official. This is not black market rates. I keep saying that. But 8 to, yeah, not 8 to 80 million, but 8 to basically 20x. 150, 160 million. And in black market for sure. I'm sure the black market rate is worse. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily equate price to purchasing power, but because Bitcoin's still up relative to a year ago, so you can purchase more than you could a year ago holding Bitcoin. But yeah, for sure, it's more volatile. But not every currency, right? So if it's getting more like 20x in Nigeria, you're still holding purchasing power much better. It does. The question is when, right? I think Wall Street is trying to front run us. I think Wall Street understands the power curve. I think they understand I know they understand the power curve. I know they understand that Peter Schiff's curve is not going to make sense after 5 years. It may run for 2 or 3 years, no question. But it's going to somehow revert back to this long term mean. And this one, sorry, where is it? This one will provide the greatest gains. Right? This is a hard asset that, if you hold it, is looking very good right now for buying more Bitcoin. And I just don't think people are going to be swayed by Peter Schiff's arguments much more in the future. In fact, I'm sure, in fact, I know, right? Peter Schiff has Bitcoin services, had for many years now, for his clients. Plus, he's a regular broker, so they have ETFs. We're going to have to count down the levels, and it's probably going to be something interesting. It's going to be I honestly cannot see it going back to the zeroth, to the worst ever. Again, that happened during a volatile Bitcoin sort of period. It's just a different world now. Having said that, I think we could go to the. I mean, look, we're about at the 10th percentile. We can go into the 9th, 8th, 7th. So I'll do that for you tomorrow. And like you said, Casa Murphy, this is tremendous gains once we revert to the mean. In this case, it's double the dollar gains if it happens. It might not happen for a while, but it's double the dollar gains. I think it's Wales, isn't it? I mean, Wales have sold that much. Wall Street has taken that over. But the IPO moment was for those whales that. Yeah, doing it in stocks as well will be an interesting play. Basically, just like this, but Bitcoin per the S&P. Do I have one set up like that? Basically, how many shares of the S&P could buy one Bitcoin? That's clearly needed here, because that's probably going to correct as well during this volatile political period. I do have it, actually. Let's see how this looks. I have not opened this in a while. 1 second. Yeah, I have it. Here we are. So I just showed you gold. Here's S&P. Not as undervalued as gold. Where it gets to, where Wall Street can push it, we have to think. 2022 was really bad, right? Everybody remembers those times. And on all the charts, that was a 10th or a little under a 10th percentile event. Except for the dollar. It was slightly better than the 10th. But it's true that we're probably due for a correction in the stock market. Stock market could correct, Bitcoin could continue to correct, and we might, get back to the mean or it might be that we only bottom out on this chart, right? The Bitcoin gold chart, when we, I don't want to say bottom out, but when we get very, very low and cheap on this chart. And we're cheap. So for our Nigerian friends, Indian friends actually are a little bit below the curve. Sorry, but Japanese friends, sorry, also a little bit below the curve. For our Nigerian friends and our Turkish friends, you're still enjoying, at least as a transactional method, Bitcoin being quite good relative to the historical trend, even though it's down, big. Got up to 4.8 million lira. Now it's only 3.9. But relative to the trend, you're still really good. Everybody wants to go to Trump's new ballroom. Bezos, he built a ballroom in his DC penthouse. Funny that. Funny that he needs that. I'd send it back here. All right. Think about the long term here. Power curve has a great R squared. Even if you bought 20% over today's price, it's still this valuation on the power median in 2036. Or end of 2035, I guess, is the way Smitty put it together. You think NVIDIA results will tell us where Bitcoin's going? pull up the Tech Titan market cap chart. Happy days remain. It's top 8 tech stocks. Nvidia's still down from that 5 trillion. Oh, sorry. I didn't update this. Again, I always gotta fix this. 1 second. One second. I guess I didn't pull that from there. Anyway. Doesn't matter. We can go to the long and short of this. Just 1 second. There's room, Geo, there's room. Here's the room. All right, so again, just like with gold, there's precedent to go higher. And again, I don't have the last week, unfortunately, for the tech market caps, but they're at 23 trillion, roughly. Top 8 tech stocks: Apple, Google, Microsoft, Nvidia. You know, there's a lot of room here on a log scale. Now, the 100th percentile is still supposed to be rare relative to the trend, and this thing can go even higher. But 1.37x is the 100th percentile, the best that's ever been done relative to the trend, right, which is 98.7% R squared, 24.3% CAGR. Again, we can do a Peter Schiff trend and assume that from the GPT days, we continue on this trend for another year. Who's to say? Maybe the Supreme Court hollows out the tariffs. Whatever. Who knows? But there's precedent to go higher. This remains to me the most bullish. Right? Because every time this thing tops out, it starts a bear, but it usually tops out by going parabolic. It's a trailing 12-month minor revenue. We haven't even gone parabolic, right? We've just recovering from that halving. and sort of early pump. But none of it is higher than the last boom. And remember, the last boom was not quite triple in revenue the prior boom. Prior boom at 6.8 billion per year. Minor revenue was 8x the prior boom. It's a very lagging indicator, but again, still I would be surprised. This can definitely go sideways and down for, I mean, like price can go sideways and down for a little bit, but this thing won't, in my opinion, fully roll over unless we've blown it out on the way up. And I don't see that we've done that. Yeah. I certainly agree that value stocks, even Trump was buying a lot of different corporate bonds I saw. Where's the Bloomberg article? It's so funny that he doesn't have his assets in like a blind trust, let alone all the crypto schemes, as we know. This remains my favorite chart. Getting extremely cheap in terms of gold. Remember, we got to 9.5 ounces of gold in 2022, which was below 0.3x the trend or the 10th percentile. So extremely rare. Again, we're in extremely rare territory relative to the trend. But we get to 9 again in March 2026. And it's just a stat. And 9 is here again, the lowest. It very rarely is below the 10th percentile. Right? It was here a little bit. The only other time it was below the 10th percentile was here in March 2020. So it's extremely rare. And if Peter Schiff tells you that this curve is going to continue forever, like I said, it could go a year, it could go 2 years, but supply is going to outstrip demand at some point. And Bitcoin doesn't have that problem. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do the copper analysis that Smithson also does. Right, I think copper is a good barometer. And remember, look at these things as far as what the markets actually earn. Right, Bitcoin has revenue. It's just not it's not revenue for investors, but miners get paid. Oil producers get paid. Gold miners get paid. Bitcoin miners get paid. This is going to rise. That is Bitcoin relative to this stack. Oil super cheap. Not as cheap as here. But as you might see, this reflects the oil price. This the gold price. And this the Bitcoin price. Hello, Ken. Yeah, I have to close it down for today, but I'll finish with this. This is a very uh, bespoke underground opportunity because I don't have the merch set up, but I have a friend in Estonia that does the shirts. Has helped me a lot with that stuff. We don't have a website set up, but we'll get there. So if you're interested in any of this, I've had some people contact me actually. If you want some super underground economic Bitcoin merch, we can do with my logo with the pig or just general generic Bitcoin stuff. Here's some other ones. Old man yells a Bitcoin meme. We can do lots of stuff. So if you're interested, send me an email, info@porkopolis.io, info@porkopolis.io. Send me an email. Again, this is not Amazon one day delivery. And it's also going to be much easier for Europeans. For US, we're going to figure it out. But for Europeans, you'll get it much sooner. Everything can be paid in Bitcoin. Please support the site if you can. But yeah, we'll get a merch page up eventually. We'll get a merch page up eventually. We don't have it now. But if you like some of the shirts, if you want something custom designed, it's no problem. We're going to do a batch now, ongoing for a couple weeks, and you'll get the stuff and a nice little package. So if you are interested in any of those, please send me an email. This is not Amazon next day, same day delivery, but we're gonna start the process slowly. All right. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. I got to jump today. I will see you tomorrow. Very interesting times. Read this tweet again if you haven't. Let the power curve ground you in reality and calm the nerves. So thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. Thank you, Daniel, Gio, and everybody else. Tim, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. All right? Take care.